Often when working in a static language like C# or VB or F#, you'll want to work with your documents as kind of classes. And so we'll handle that mapping for you from bson to class or from class to bson. So here I've got some sample classes set up, an ID, which will by convention map to the underscore ID field in MongoDB, a name, an age, colors, which will get rendered as an array. And this doesn't have to be a list, it can be an IEnumerable or some other kind of type that implements IEnumerable. And same down here, pets, and of course pet will get rendered as a nested document, because it itself is a Poco in this case. And then I've got this extra elements field that's kind of like a catch-all, like if you have a static kind of domain like this, but then you want to allow people to add extra attributes to the person that you're not really going to work with in your application, but they'd like to have for lookup or whatever, then they can all kind of get stuffed in there, and we'll specially handle that particular field. And again, that's by convention, so if you want it to be called something else, you can do that, and we'll get into how to customize those later. So up here I've got sample person created, Jones 30 colors. Notice I didn't create the ID at all. That'll get created for us when we persist it to MongoDB. In this case it'll stay as its default value because we didn't initialize it. Colors red and blue, pets, Fluffy the pig. And then extra elements where another name and another value. You'll notice when we print this out to the console here, you won't see an extra elements field anywhere. You'll simply see another name at the top level with another value. You likely won't see or need to use this code in your applications because you'll be working with MongoDB and we do this kind of thing underneath the covers for you. But for the purposes of this, I just need to print it out to the console. So let's go ahead and look at that. So sure enough, here we go. We've got ID initialized to its default value of all zeros. Name is Jones, age is 30. Our colors are persisted as an array. Pets are persisted also as an array with one element, and Fluffy the pig is there. And as I said, another name is a top-level value with another value, so you don't actually see the extra elements part. Now that we've rendered these to the console, you might notice that we may not want them to look like they are, either in MongoDB or in the console. We may want names to be lowercase. And so there's three ways of doing that. The first and kind of most straightforward way is simply to use attributes. And so I can put a bson element on here and say, hey, I want this thing to be rendered in lowercase. And there's many things you can do. So we can tell it to ignore a particular element, and so it won't get rendered at all. We can say, hey, if you see extra elements, then just ignore them all. We don't really care about them. Ignore if default, so don't persist a value if it's the default value. So if name was null, hey, just don't even write it to the server, just keep it here. Bson representation is interesting, so notice that age is an integer. Well, I may want that for some reason to be a string. Maybe some other application with some other driver had written it as a string. I want to work with it as an integer, and I know it's going to be an integer, but it's represented in the database as a string. So there's a lot of things we can do here. Let's just go ahead and run this so you can see the changes. So name here is lowercase now, and age is now quoted, where before it was just the integer value. Another way of changing the output, either to MongoDB or to the console, is instead of using attributes, is just to use code. So I'm going to delete those attributes down here and come up and use bson class map to register this thing. It takes a lambda expression, and this needs to go before anything else in your application, before you start talking to MongoDB. This is a kind of global registry, so you'll need to make sure that this happens first. There's a number of things I can do, but automap is saying, hey, go and run all the conventions that have been configured and do whatever you normally do, and now I'm going to come back in and customize something. So cm.map member, and I'm going to map the name member, and I'm going to set its element name. There's a number of other things I can do in there. Basically anything I can do with an attribute I can do via code here as well. So setting the ignore if defaults or the order or what serializer we should use. And of course I can read those back out if I ever wanted to see what we set those to at runtime. So now I have no attributes and just code at the beginning of my application. Let's see what happens here. Oh, I need to put a person in there. Person. There we go. Let's see what happens here. And so you'll notice our name is still wrong. Oh, that's because it got uppercased on me. Anyway, let's fix that. And there we go. So now name is lowercase. Finally, the third and final way of customizing the mapping of Pocos to bson and back is to use conventions. So when we call cm.automap here, or automatically when we just use attributes, conventions run. So there got to be a way that we can configure those. And this is useful. For instance, right now we're setting the element name of name to a lowercase first character, but age is still going to be capitalized and colors will. And so if we want to do that on all of them, either we have to map them all manually using code or add attributes manually to everything. And that's simply kind of not what we want to do a lot of cases. It's a lot more work than necessary. So in this case, we can create something called a convention pack. So we just new one up, and then we add conventions to it. And in this case, we have some pre-created conventions for you. In this case, I want to use the camel case element name convention. And then I want to register that. So I do that in the convention registry. And I go ahead and register that. I need to give it a name. And I'm going to give it this convention pack. And this last one is, hey, what types do I want this convention to apply to? In my case here, I want that to apply to all my types, but I can check and say, hey, only if the namespace is business objects or something like that. So if I do that, and again, I need to do that before I run my class map, otherwise it won't pick up those conventions. And quite frankly, at this point, I don't need the class map. This will just happen automatically for me. And I go ahead and run this. Then what you'll see is that all the names of these things have been lowercased. So name is now lowercased, age is now lowercase, colors and pets are all lowercased. Conventions are very powerful, and you can write your own conventions. There are, as I said, a couple that we have pre-written for you, but I would definitely explore those and see what you can do with them.